And we're alive. It's been a while, you guys, since we've done anything. Hello, Facebook friends, and hello, people in Twitter world, and hello to Gravities and Freeze platforms as well. First of all, we're having a major discussion today. It's just an introduction, but it's important because we have a lot of corruption going on, and the government is just overbearing. I'm just looking at so many cases, and I'm just like, what do we do? Because they're just doing whatever they want to. So, looking for a solution. So I want to introduce some amazing gentlemen who volunteered their time today to come and discuss this with us, to ask me hard facts, ask me questions, challenge me, and to discuss moving forward, what could we do next. So let's hear from Mr. Kid Gravity, and we'll go with Free.
Hello. Hi. My name is Kid Gravity. I do politics and social commentary on YouTube, and I make MAGA's Life a Living Hell on X. So if you want to follow me on X at the Kid Gravity, you can get facts and maybe watch Maggie get their feelings hurt. But thank you, Donnie, for this opportunity.
And he's quite entertaining.
I try.
Go ahead, Free.
Thanks for having me. I'm Free. I host the game show called Are You Smarter Than a Politician, where we roast politics and have a lot of fun while we talk about important issues that are affecting our country. And I also host the Freedom Uncut series of podcasts where we talk about libertarian and anarchist topics as they relate to the world today. And I'm a huge fan of Donnie. Just met Kid Gravity. Excited to be here. Happy to help.
Thank you. And you guys, Jeff couldn't make it. He's working right now, but he did have a message to add to this conversation. He's going to kind of discuss how grand juries have worked now, and then we're going to dive into how they're supposed to work. So give us one moment.
Okay, I want to talk to you about one of the most powerful weapons that the government has in its arsenal. It's called the grand jury. Now, that might sound boring. You've heard of grand juries before, but chances are you don't really know what they are, how they work, and what they do. So I'm just going to give you a little snapshot. Now, the grand jury is supposed to be a safeguard, but in reality, it's often used by prosecutors to destroy lives, violate liberties, violate rights, and all kinds of horrible things. So really quick, what is a grand jury? A grand jury is a group of ordinary citizens, usually between 16 to 23 people. They meet in secret to decide whether there is probable cause to charge someone with a crime. So it's not a jury that prosecutes anybody or convicts anybody. It's basically there to decide, yeah, there's probably enough evidence here to warrant arresting or trying to prosecute somebody or indicting somebody. But here's the problem. There's no judge, there's no defense attorney, no cross-examination. If a grand jury is deciding whether they're going to indict you, you're not even able to be there. You can't even make your own case. Only the prosecutor gets to present evidence, and they can show almost anything, including hearsay or stuff that would never be allowed in a real trial. Let's say you have a neighbor who doesn't like you. They can interview that neighbor and find out why they don't like you and use that to persuade a grand jury to indict you. A grand jury, there's this famous saying, a grand jury could indict a ham sandwich if the prosecutor wanted it. And that's true. That quote came from a New York judge, and it's not a joke. In the grand jury room, the prosecutor holds all of the cards. And here's the thing. Members of grand juries actually do have rights. They do have powers. Like they can subpoena witnesses, they can request documents, but chances are, if you're on a grand jury, the prosecutor isn't telling you that you have these rights. So most grand jurors don't even know. They just go with whatever the prosecution says. Now, here's the thing. Grand juries operate in total secrecy. The public is not allowed to attend. The press can't come in and report on it. And again, the accused person doesn't even get to testify unless the prosecutor allows it. And how often do you think that happens, right? Now, I want you to think about that for a second. You could be accused of a crime. A group of strangers hears a one-sided story, and boom, you're indicted. You're facing felony charges. Your name is in the news. Your life is turned upside down because of secret proceedings based on people who you don't know, can't see, can't speak to, and who are being manipulated by prosecutors, and you have no chance to defend yourself. Now, here's the thing. This secrecy was originally meant to protect innocent people from public shame if they weren't indicted. But today, it's nothing more than a shield for the government, not the individual. Prosecutors abuse grand juries in several different ways. All too often, they're used to punish dissent, to silence whistleblowers, or to even coerce someone into a plea deal. Federal prosecutors can convene a grand jury for months, even years. They can subpoena your emails, your text messages, your bank records, all without needing a judge's approval. They don't need a warrant for this stuff, right? It's just not something that they have to do. They can tell your friend, they can call your friends and family, they can grill them under oath whenever they want. And if someone lies, even by accident, even if somebody gets some facts wrong, they can be charged with perjury or obstruction, which makes people afraid to speak out. It turns witnesses into targets, and it pressures innocent people into taking plea deals just to make the whole nightmare, the whole ordeal stop. This is not justice. This is legalized extortion. Now, if you think that this only happens to the bad guys or to guilty people, I've got some prime oceanfront property in Idaho to sell you on the cheap. Hit me up. These prosecutors will target whistleblowers, like I said before, political activists, gun owners, journalists. All kinds of people have been dragged through these grand jury proceedings. And in a lot of cases, they weren't even really the target of the investigation, but they leverage these grand juries to compel somebody to play ball. So let's say you're a Second Amendment activist. The feds are investigating someone you know. You get subpoenaed. You go in. They ask you questions to try to trip you up. And if you answer wrong, or if you invoke your rights too firmly, you might become the next target. That's how the system works. It's built on coercion and fear. And the scariest part, the prosecutors are never held accountable. So obviously there's something wrong with this system, right? There's something wrong with this apparatus. This whole thing needs to be reformed in many different ways. Something's got to change because the justice system was ever supposed to be. And we, the people, need to be alert. Here's the thing. Prosecutors do not fear consequences, but they should fear an informed public that knows how the system really works.
Donnie, you're muted.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Jeff, for getting that video together for us and discussing basically how it works now. How he described everything is not how it's supposed to work. The people have given our powers to the governments or allowed them to take over juries. So juries weren't set up this way. And I'm going to explain to you and prove to you why the juries belong to us. There's nothing in the Constitution that states that the prosecutor gets to do all the things that Jeff just mentioned. There's nothing in the Constitution that says they get to pick who the jury is, and we have no say as defendants or citizens on who's on this jury. And then how do you have juries of your peers? How do they figure that out if they're going through the DMV, if they're going through voter registration? There's quite a few people who are not registered voters, or some people don't have a driver's license. So how can they be left out of the whole equation? So what we're going to do is tell you guys how it's actually supposed to work, and then we're going to discuss solutions and go from there. So next up is going to be a presentation. I hope not to bore you, but it's going to be about 8 minutes. You guys ready?
Sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go, you guys.
Except in cases of impeachment shall be by jury, and such trial shall be held in the state where the said crime shall have been committed. But when not committed within any state, the trial shall be at such place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Fifth Amendment, United States Constitution. The Sixth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Let me know.
The grand jury, a constitutional weapon of the people against tyranny and injustice, rooted in natural law, secured by the Constitution, stolen by the state. The grand jury was not created by the government. It was created to restrain the government. Its origins trace back to common law England, where citizens used presentments to hold powerful elites accountable and protect themselves from abusive monarchs and corrupt sheriffs. The founders of the United States recognized the critical role of this institution in safeguarding liberty, so they codified its existence and power in the Constitution. Not as a privilege granted by the state, but as a right retained by the people. Fifth Amendment. The people's indictment power. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. U.S. Constitution, Amendment 5. That sentence enshrines the two independent paths by which someone may be brought to answer for a crime. Indictment, which today is typically guided by a government prosecutor. Presentment, which requires no government actor at all, and instead allows the grand jury itself to initiate an action based on the evidence the people bring. The grand jury's power of presentment, meaning they can act on their own authority, is almost totally suppressed in modern courts, but it remains a retained right embedded in the structure of the Republic. Article 3. Jury power, not judicial power. The trial of all crimes except in cases of impeachment shall be by jury. U.S. Constitution, Article 3, Section 2. The Constitution does not say that shall be by judge, by lawyer, or by district attorney. It says jury, because in American law, the jury is sovereign when it comes to determining fact, law, justice, and even the validity of the statute itself. This includes the grand jury, which operates prior to trial and serves as a barrier to stop government abuses before they reach a courtroom. In fact, under original intent, the grand jury was the first layer of constitutional protection, not the courts, not the police, and not prosecutors. What makes the grand jury so dangerous to tyranny? Because it belongs to no branch of government. This was confirmed by the Supreme Court in United States v. Williams, 504 U.S. Guide 36, 1992, where Justice Antonin Scalia wrote, "The grand jury is mentioned in the Bill of Rights, but not in the body of the Constitution. It has not been textually assigned, therefore, to any of the branches described in the first three articles. It is a constitutional fixture in its own right." In fact, the whole theory of its function is that it belongs to no branch of the institutional government, serving as a kind of buffer or referee between the government and the people. In other words, the grand jury is not subject to prosecutors, not to judges, not to Congress, not to the president. It is a constitutional body of the people, and its powers exceed those of any agent of the state when exercised lawfully by free individuals. What can a grand jury actually do? When properly organized under constitutional principles and free from government interference, a grand jury can nullify unjust laws by refusing to indict under them, initiate presentments against corrupt officials, police, judges, or prosecutors, investigate crimes committed by the government, not just the people, demand evidence from public servants and agencies, invalidate statutes that violate natural rights or the Constitution, refuse consent to be governed by tyrannical or foreign systems masquerading as law. Why is this power suppressed today? Because a free grand jury threatens the state's monopoly on power and prosecution. Over the last century, particularly after the Civil War and the rise of the legal professions cartel system, bar associations, the function of the grand jury was gradually swallowed by the prosecutorial state. Today, most grand juries are manipulated by district attorneys who handpick evidence, control who testifies, and suppress any action that challenges state power. But this is not how the system was designed, and it is not how liberty survives. Reviving the people's grand jury. The people still retain the right to convene their own grand jury, especially when the system refuses to hold itself accountable. This is rooted in natural law, which precedes the Constitution and affirms the right to self-governance, common law, which authorized grand juries to issue presentments and conduct independent investigations, the Ninth Amendment, which protects rights not enumerated in the Constitution, the 10th Amendment, which reserves all undelegated powers to the people, the Declaration of Independence, which declares it the right and duty of the people to abolish destructive governments. Nullification through presentment, the people's veto. A law that violates natural rights is no law at all. When governments enact statutes that criminalize freedom, steal property, or enforce tyranny, the people have not consented. And when a grand jury refuses to indict under those laws or declares through presentment that those laws are unjust or invalid, it is executing the ultimate veto power. We do not consent, and we will not comply. This is not rebellion. This is constitutionally protected resistance. Conclusion, we the people must reclaim it. The grand jury is the most powerful, forgotten weapon in the Constitution. It was designed to prevent everything we see happening today: injustice, corruption, surveillance, tyranny. But no government will hand this power back willingly. It must be reclaimed by the people who understand it, organize it, and use it. Not just as a shield, but as a sword, to nullify tyranny, to indict corruption, to withdraw consent from unjust power, and to restore the natural order of liberty under God and Constitution.
You're muted again.
I gotta do this more often so I can stop talking to a muted microphone. So you guys, this was a big deal to me because I've been trying to find solutions, especially for farmers and especially the game fowl community. When I'm seeing a lot of raids happening, law enforcement's coming in with bad warrants or no warrants at all. Judges are putting their names on warrants without affidavits, and it seems like it's impossible for a defendant to make way. There's even a lot of cases where prosecutors are having secret meetings and not court hearings, nothing scheduled, but having defendants go to prosecutor's office and try to coerce and scare them into plea deals because they don't want to go to trial. It's interesting how they're afraid of going to trials, but yet they have so much power over the juries. And so there's been a recent case in Mississippi, and they had people were indicted after the raid and everything, this, that, and the third. But they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know what was going to happen. And it's like, why is it's okay for the prosecutor? I'm looking in the Constitution. I'm looking, in history. Where in the Constitution did it say that prosecutors have this authority? I'm not finding it. I gave like 2 amendments, and I gave the Articles 2, Clause 3, which states consistently that trial is supposed to be by a jury. And now I'm saying, where does it say that how they determine juries? Where do you find the juries? I saw someone ask a question about, well, can we just ask for our own juries? In the current state, depending on where you live at, certain states do have something like that. But if we can start making our own grand juries and juries, it'll save taxpayers a lot of money. One, we're not paying for the juries to be there. You have people who are willing and wanting to do this already, people who are educated in the United States Constitution, their state constitution, and natural law. They come together, you start mailing out mailers to your community, and start building your own grand juries. Now, the government say, I'm going to ignore you. I'm not going to use your grand jury. We're going to keep doing what we've been doing. Because you can do motions and stuff and say, hey, I asked for a trial by jury. I didn't ask for a trial by judge. I didn't ask for a trial by prosecution. Well, fine. If they're going to keep going ahead and going against you in court and do what they want to do, those jury members could be your witnesses. They've already looked over your whole case. They've already made their determination, and they can come and talk to a jury. Where, you know, a lot of judges try to say, oh, you can't bring this up in court, but these are my witnesses. And a lot of times when these things were done back in the day, they would put their verdicts and stuff in the newspaper. It would be mailed out to people in the community. It wasn't a secret. I was also looking at some stories where they actually went after some judges and politicians. They were trying to do some power grab and selling land to people for really cheap. And basically the United States government wasn't supposed to have all that land and be selling it like that. And so the grand jury deemed that's unconstitutional, wrong. And so new politicians came in and ran against what they did before. So there's different ways you can pressure. So another thing is influence, and also with, you know, the legality of everything. So it would just, to me, it's like I have to find a solution. There's no way like we have nothing. You know, we the people, the 10th Amendment, what's our role? Well, that's the jury. That's not supposed to be controlled by prosecution. The judge is not supposed to be striking things and determining facts. That's supposed to be the jury. The jury determines facts, and it determines the law. And if the grand jury says, hey, this law is unconstitutional in the first place, you save a lot of money not paying for an attorney. You know, you pay a lot, you save a lot of money by your rights not being infringed on. You're not being afraid and fearful that you're gonna be locked up for the rest of your life in prison. But when you actually have a barrier, a shield, such as a grand jury that actually looks at the law and says, is this legal or not in the first place, and they look at the facts, then a lot of these cases won't even make it. They would die. But right now, since prosecution controls all of it, this is where we're at. But I'll let you guys go ahead and start asking your questions, or what do y'all think? Poke some holes in everything. What do y'all are thinking?
So I have a question. Is the selection process for grand jurors transparent and free from state manipulation?
I'd say no. One, I can tell you, I actually watched a corrupt judge, not going to say her name yet, but she is actually speaking at a Rorty group and was telling them how the whole jury selection process works. And she was even saying, hey, some of these people in this room were jurors. I can't tell y'all who they are, but if they want to talk to you, they can. So judges can actually get to these groups and get people who are actually politically involved and say, hey, you know, if you're called for jury, we need your help. So then the judge will actually know who these people are in the jury, but people won't realize that. It's pretty corrupt. And I don't see, you asked a good question, Free, when we were on the phone earlier. You asked me, why is it that the defendant gets to vote pick half and the prosecution gets to pick half? There's nothing that says the prosecution should have any say. And, you know, people should be able to pick which jury they want or not. Say if Donnie and Free and Kid Gravity get at least 12 people together to 12 to 23 people together to do a grand jury. Well, that could be just one grand jury. Say Dana or Reparations Nation or Anthony Phillips wants to start their own grand juries. Have people pick. You know, what I'm suggesting is the United States Constitution and the Texas, I'll just say Texas, for example, Texas Constitution and knowing natural laws being the minimum you should know in order to be on this, versus the United States government doesn't require anyone to know what the Constitution is or know how everything's supposed to work. Which one would you choose?
Agreed. Yeah, are grand jurors even trained to understand like the complex legal issues that they're being asked to judge, or are they overly reliant on the prosecutor's direction?
And it's mostly the prosecutor's direction. I mean, they may end up having someone like you or a Kid or myself that you could end up on a grand jury, right? Could. But most likely they're going to be people on that grand jury that's just like, okay, I don't want to let them be here. Okay, what do I need to do? And they take direction from the prosecutor.
Yeah, if I ever got called for a jury and they asked me what I did for a living, I would tell them I was a statist and, you know, just I comply with the government so I could get in there and work my magic.
Absolutely. Kid?
I was looking over that document you sent us, and Like, why are we still operating with a judge? I guess that's my question.
That's a good question. That is a good question, because if you think about it, what do we need the judge for? They're supposed to be apparently mediators. It says jury, trial by jury. So honestly, I was telling Free as well, like, why are we even in courtrooms? I mean, in today's age, we have technology. You can go on Zoom, do everything on Zoom, and it's recorded. Another problem is with courts, a lot of times you can't bring in a camera or your cell phone, record anything without the court's permission. Well, yet they say you have a public trial. That's what you have a right to, right? Or a lot of times they'll tell you your parents or your family members or friends can't be in the courtroom. They'll kick them out. Now, there's some places that have family in the courtrooms, but there's some judges that say, get out. You can't be in here. But it's supposed to be public. So you're violating my rights. So I don't see where the point of having a judge. I don't see the point of even the prosecutor, based off how the Constitution was written and how things were done in the past. It's like they hijacked the justice system.
Probably they can't control the people, so they control the entity.
You know, let me tell you something else too. I was thinking, because as I do more research, I start asking myself more questions and looking into it. I was like, you know, the judges always have like cop bodyguards or sheriffs in their courtrooms. Like, what is that supposed to be? Intimidation? Because there's nothing in the Constitution that states that that's supposed to happen. So you see, the judicial branch doesn't have any policing powers, right? But yet they're working with the executive branch as a violation of separation of power. So, like, would we ever really think about those things? You know, especially if an officer, you know, gets shot. Why is it okay for the whole department, a whole bunch of cops that they're standing there to intimidate you? What's the point of that?
Yeah, and especially when there's a ruling that's not fair, like in Dexter Taylor's case with not being able to mention the Second Amendment, you know, to have it enforced by armed guards standing in front of them saying, you can't bring up the Constitution. And by the way, if you do, we'll, you know, handcuff you again and drag you out of here.
Right. And, you know, that literally should make this whole case go away. Like, this is not a fair trial. You have a right to, you know, have witnesses, which the Constitution is a witness itself. You have a right to be able to argue your facts so you can, you know, win your case. But the problem is, it's like the judges have decided that they are God. They think they are. Think about it, how the courtroom is set up. They have the commandments in there. They can tell you when you can and can't speak. They decide your punishment. They tell the jurors what they can and can't hear, strike this, hide evidence, especially the evidence protects the person who's being accused. You know, one of my biggest issues too is with these cases. Like I said, these judges write bad warrants. So I'm like, how do y'all go to law school and don't know the affidavit comes before a warrant? That just blows my mind. So they're not even competent. They're competent or corrupt or both. It's up to you to decide. The other issue I have is, you know, prosecutors sitting there listing all these charges. You know, I was telling Free earlier. So if you have 100 or thousands of game birds and they want to accuse you of something, they're going to charge you per animal. So imagine, you know, you're looking at like a ton of years. You won't have your farm anymore. You won't see your family. You're gonna lose your career, job, and they're throwing 100 counts of quote unquote animal cruelty on you. You'll be locked up for a very long time. That will scare people to waive their Sixth Amendment rights. But without those problems and those barriers, we actually have grand juries that are educated. They actually know what your rights are. They actually know what due process is, what they can and can't do and skip. It changes the game, the whole yard. But, you know, like I said earlier, the bar associations come in and basically taking over everything. The other big thing I always talk about too is it says assistance of counsel. It doesn't say attorney. It doesn't say lawyer. And then the Judicial Act of 1789 even stated there was a distinct difference. It said counsel and it also said attorney in it. So there's a distinct difference. So them saying, oh, you have to have an attorney to help you. No, we have each other. We can advocate for each other. We shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars for someone who doesn't even want to go to the courtroom and have you pleading guilty for something you're not guilty of.
Another question I have is, what measures prevent the state from using a grand jury to bypass judicial oversight? Namely, you could not be able to get a warrant, but you could bypass that by having a grand jury and indicting someone through that grand jury when you couldn't even get a warrant. Is that correct?
Well, that's the current system we have now, that they're going around the actually having to do the process and doing that, using the grand jury that way, which that's never how the grand jury is supposed to be used. Even though what they're doing that now, regardless, it states in the Fourth Amendment, they have to have an affidavit, so a warrant supported by an affidavit. These people have to swear an oath or be convicted for perjury, like Jeff was stating earlier. But they want to, that you can't bypass it. They're just making their own rules. They're making up things as they go along. So they created these different departments. Think about it. You got the DOJ, and there's different departments in the DOJ. You know, they just keep on growing and growing at these branches, and these branches are getting so to the point where you can't recognize if they're the same or not. Judges are creating law in the courtrooms. The cops are basically making up their own rules on the side of the road, telling you things that have nothing to do with the Constitution at all. And the legislation is just passing whatever laws and bills they want to. I mean, we literally just talk about the big, beautiful bill, and then you have some representatives who said they didn't even read it.
That's not the right name.
What is it? What I got it wrong? Big. No. What is it?
The bad bill scam. That's what it's called.
The bad bill scam.
The bad bill scam.
So you see, and think about it. You're most likely your district attorney, your prosecutors, they're lawyers, right? Your judges, most likely lawyers. A lot of your lawmakers, lawyers. There's no separation of power, and yet they have hijacked our very strong piece. It seems small, our very piece that protects us. Also, where do you see in the Constitution where it tells us that the government can control the elections, or a party system can control the elections? That's another discussion for another day, but we can take that back too. But we got to start doing it. And, you know, I tell people, I was telling Free, I said, one of the big things I've learned doing this stuff is not to really get upset or mad when people disagree with you, or, you know, just more so just put the information out there. If they don't agree, that's fine. But when it comes down to, you don't have to convince 1 million people. You don't have to convince a lot of people. You need at minimum 12 to have a grand jury. And what you do is you get organized in your local area. You let the people know, hey, we're a grand jury here, and people can sign into it, or they want to become a part of it. It legitimizes it. You think people want to have a grand jury the way it's set up now, or the juries how they're set up now? They would prefer this solution. Honestly, when you get down to it, the nitty-gritty part of it, you don't need that many people to get started. And as long as you're letting people know what's going on and inviting them to be able to be a part of something, let's do it. But the thing is, like I said, they need to be able to know the Constitution, state and federal and natural law, or they shouldn't be participating at all.
Is there any public ability to hold prosecutors accountable if they abuse their power during grand jury proceedings?
Maybe you could recall.
So you mean like?
Yeah, is there any accountability at all? Like if they do something, you know, against the law?
The system we have today?
Correct.
For the system we have today, right? Right. There doesn't seem to be. Unless, you know, they're playing political games and they want to get rid of a prosecutor, you know. But they're pretty much protecting themselves. I'm telling you, like, there's a case clearly cut and dry. I'm going to see how I'm going to do this. The judges in other districts will help each other. There's a judge who's supposed to recuse herself, did not recuse herself, went to a district judge outside of her district to deny it. People will shop for courts to see which one they can get a better chance in, and they just let them do it. Even if the law is on the defendant side or the person suing side, they're going to help and protect each other. But we don't want to help. We don't help and protect each other like we should. We should be as strongly bond together as the prosecutors and the judges and lawyers are. They're all buddy teaming up against us, but yeah, we can't stand 10 toes for each other. People see something in the newspaper, breaking news, and then there's some kind of mugshot. This person's being accused of this, but they say it as if they're guilty. I thought we were saying we didn't believe in the news and the media was fake, but yet anytime they're accusing someone of something, everyone's just like, this person's bad. And also that is jury tampering. If you're putting out information as if someone's already guilty, then how do they have a chance to even have a fair trial?
But that's not what they want. They want to be able to control the narrative. That way they can have a win.
And in a sense, you see, they do all this work. They have all this work putting out to media to tamper with the jury and decide who gets to be on the jury. That jury is so dangerous to them. Why would they have to do all that? It doesn't belong to them, though. Now, I will say, can some juries be corrupted? Yes. But like I said, the more of us that exist in our communities, people have more options to pick. And they're saying, well, you can't pick your own jury. We're in the Constitution that says that I can't. Where's the Constitution that you have the authority to pick the jury? It doesn't say that. And all these different, you can use all these different codes and all these different laws and amendments that I've shown you guys, and we start using it. Is it something we're using now? No, we can start. I'm already discussing trying to get people to do this already, and people are on board.
Is there any independent oversight that reviews grand juries and looks at them for fairness or compliance to the existing laws?
If that exists, I don't know about it.
I haven't heard of it.
Oh, you kid.
No. I thought that was Twitter.
That's a good point.
You guys have anyone in y'all's comment section who ask questions that we haven't gone over yet?
No. I just say everybody's pissed off.
Yeah. Nobody's happy
So
with
here's
the way
my
it is, that's for sure.
Here's my thing. I understand you're pissed, right? You take that anger you have and we move forward with the solution. Instead of just talk about it. This won't be my only time we do it. This is an introduction. I actually plan on doing a longer documentary version. I'm going to go around to my community and ask people who has the authority to decide who's on the grand jury or a jury. And it's not going to be like some Turning Point USA, aha, I'm making fun of you because you don't know anything. It's to educate people and give them information too. I been recently just going around passing out taxation or theft stickers, and people freaking love that, right? And it's not pointing to a political party. People all agree. Then they start talking about, man, our property taxes are too high. I like it. I need that one too.
I'm handing these out at Freedom Fest and at the Libertarian Party of Florida convention this weekend. So I also have the other one I have is
Steal Your Wealth.
Little Grateful Dead takeoff there.
It's already yours.
Wait, is there going to be refreshments if you do this?
There's always refreshments
and I've given
libertarian events.
And one big thing that we don't talk about that a lot of people care about is property taxes. I'm telling you, it is in this area. They complain about how the property taxes are so high, how the vehicle taxes in our parish is so high. And if you go to certain cities, I'm talking about almost 10% sales tax. And people are just fed up. Like they're like, this government's vampires and it's sucking us dry. I mean, we don't own our labor or anything. We start doing things like using our grand juries to fight back. Here's the thing: are we going to win every time, or the government's going to allow us? No, but we get more creative, and it's documented that we don't consent. The biggest thing too is we don't consent. They need consent in order to govern over us, and people aren't consenting to this. That's why I'm gonna say persecuting people, and not just arresting and kidnapping. They're persecuting people. You're living freely and exercising your rights, and they can come around and kidnap you, take you, and hold you for ransom, and threaten your life, your liberty, your property. We don't have a legit system, and they act as if they've conquered us. It's what you do with countries you conquered, not to the people you're supposed to be serving.
There's a question right there from William. Maybe you can answer that one.
Where is it? Did you just ask it?
Yeah.
All I see is Hi Nisi.
No, it's all the way down.
I did go all the way down. I can't see it on my side, I guess.
Huh. Interesting. Well, he said he wants to join a grand jury, but how do you make that happen when you have a 9 to 5?
That's another thing I was saying earlier. I think people can get together, start doing their meetings in person, training and studying and everything in person. But like I said, this is a new age. We can use technology. You can use laptops and Zoom and Google Meet calls and stuff like that, in order to discuss things. It doesn't need to be 9 to 5 when all this happens. It might be best for everybody to meet in the evening. We have more control over it when it's not the government running it. If that makes any sense.
I think the work you're doing here is so important. Putting the information out there, giving it to people in a way that they can consume it either real time like this, or, go back and watch the replay. We're going to do the space at 6:30 Eastern tonight, where we're going to talk about this more. Just organize people, educate people, get the information out there in the best way possible for it to be consumed.
Absolutely. And kid, I decided that today, I don't know if you can make it or not. I was like, you know what? I should probably do this on Spaces too. Like, just go over what we discussed. I don't know if you'll be able to make it or not at that time, but if you can,
I'll see.
Okay. But, I really do appreciate you guys for coming up here and being a part of this. Like I said, this is just the beginning. I would like to start having information that I can either mail to people or email to you guys, so we can start getting started on this, because the sooner the better. For me, I'm looking at right now, the American citizens are always on the defense, and we need to be on the offense. And so the sooner we get started on this stuff, get organized our communities and get everything planned out, the better. You're going to fail if you don't try. You know what I mean? So it's best to get organized and get going now. If we never start it, then it's never going to happen.
The best thing we have going for us is that people complain when they get selected for a jury because it's so inconvenient and, an antiquated thing to do. But when people complain, if you see it on social media, that's the time to hit them up and tell them about jury nullification and, the power that they actually have to reverse all of these problems with just their voice, to educate other jurors, to be an advocate for the rights of not just the person that's being accused, but for all of us.
Absolutely, because it could be you. People tend to not care until it happens to them. So we got to start caring before it hits us.
That's what I always say is, when you hear about a law that you're not sure about, always think about it like, take your least favorite politician of all time and then take your child, and just imagine your child gets accused of that, and your least favorite politician of all time is the judge. And would you be comfortable with that going down?
Absolutely. And think about it. At the end of the day, like I was saying on X the other day, I said, when it comes down to any kind of government policy, the first thing you look at is where the authority come from. If it came from nowhere, it's arbitrary and it is tyrannical. So if they don't have the authority to do it, they shouldn't be fucking doing it. That simple.
Yeah.
But you guys want to have your closing statements, and then we'll call this show to adjourn.
I had one more question. So you talked about this is the first step. Can you talk about future steps and what's the best way to educate the public on jury power?
So as of now, I don't have anything on my website quite yet, because it's, like I said, this is in this early stage. You can go to www.libertyorelse.com and sign up for the website. And then when you do a message, say, I'm interested in going further with the grand juries discussion or being a part of it, where can I start? What can you do? And then we can just start coming together and compiling information. I also sent you guys Lysander Spooner's jury trial document. He's a genius, honestly. He said a lot of great things in there that makes a lot of sense. He's on point. I can't understand how anybody who said they love liberty will talk smack about him, and call him a communist. But that's a good starting point with learning like natural law, actually where things come from. it even brought up in his stuff how the king would have officers, and the officers were not even allowed to be a part of the trial. So if the king picked someone officer, you had these judges who were appointed by our president, aka our kings. That wasn't a voted position. They're not even supposed to be in the courtrooms. He goes really deep in back in the gap where everything started, because United States is not an old country. It's kind of new compared to the other countries. I also suggest, again, getting into your state constitutions and reading them. One big thing about the United States Constitution, yes, we discussed the Bill of Rights. They're very important. The amendments are important. But when you go and look at what Article 1 says, what Congress can and can't do, Article 2 telling what the executive branch can and can't do, or what the judicial branch, Article 3 says. And the big thing with Congress, you have to think about all the bills and the laws and all the money they're spending. What they can do is very limited. And again, if this is a criminal trial, it's supposed to be by a jury. It does not say judge and prosecutor. So they've changed the rules. This is honestly a rogue government. Like, this is super illegitimate. Like, how do we consent to something that isn't even following its own rules? Like, how you gonna lock me up for not following your rules, but you don't even follow your rules?
I mean, we had an entire election where nobody got primary.
Mm-hmm.
But they were cool with it. And that's where the hypocrisy comes in, because you can't say that you're for law and all this, and you saw both sides do that and you didn't say a word.
Exactly. And it comes down to, fear. What are people afraid of? If we don't ever overcome our fear, step out of our box, get from being comfortable, how do you win anything? You're gonna have a comfortable win. We're gonna have some pains. And it's gonna be a learning stage. I am in a lot different place now, what I know, compared to 2020, 2019. I completely see things different, in a sense. And honestly, at the end of the day, yes, I bring up the Constitution and things of that nature. But at this point, they're not following the Constitution. And they didn't from the very beginning either. They literally started the Constitution. We discussed this before, Kid Gravity. They passed the Constitution, was enforcing it before they had all the colonies agreeing to it.
Right.
So it's like we trade one king for another. But until we realize that we are more than what the government sees us as, which is livestock, and be the Davids against the Goliaths, right? We're gonna say we're gonna say their shit. They're gonna just use us and walk all over us and do whatever they want to. But until we stand up and say, "Yo, enough's enough," and y'all don't have the authority to do this anyways, we're gonna be stuck here.
I do have one question before we go. Why didn't they just adopt the Magna Carta fully?
That's a good question. I don't know, kid. I guess it would have been too obvious.
I guess I got a rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, me too. I love homework.
Yeah.
All right. You guys want to do your closing statements and plug your stuff and then call it a day?
Go for it, kid.
Okay. Well, thank you, Donnie, for having me. Thank you, Free. Now we've met, and hopefully we'll talk more in the future. But yeah, this conversation inspired me. And as I said, I'm going to do some homework. And I actually just found a live that I'm going to do before the other live, because I got to go laugh at somebody in Congress who just got played. So I'm going to do that at 3:00. So if you're on YouTube, just wait, Kid Gravity. I'm sure it'll say live in like 5 minutes, and we're going to have a ball laughing. So you guys, if you in between homework, you can come listen to it and get some laughs. I'll help you burn calories.
Thank you so much, kid, for coming on. I appreciate you. Free.
Yes, man.
Donnie, great space. Kid, great meeting you. Donnie, you're an inspiration. You do so much amazing stuff. Really appreciate all you're doing. I learned so much from you. To everybody out there, I want to wish you all a happy Killdozer Day. Reminder to resist the power. And I'm actually wearing my Killdozer shirt. So I have my other car is a Killdozer shirt on, which you can get at freedomsuperstore.com. And if you want to laugh, you can obviously go with Kid Gravity. And also on Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, we are doing the game show, Are You Smarter Than a Politician? Live from the Libertarian Party of Florida convention. First time we've ever tried it live, so this will be wilder than usual. We have Spike Cohen, who was the vice presidential candidate with Joe Jorgensen in 2020. We have Stephen Nikela, who is the chairman of the Libertarian Party National Committee. And in addition to that, we have the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Florida, who is Matt Johnson. So we have three great minds of liberty that are leading through example and through their positions. So really excited to do that. And so if you're available, it'll be streaming online Friday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And we hope to get Donnie and Jeff at some point too, hopefully.
Oh,
Yes, it's going to happen. We discussed that. I'm excited. I got to see the one with Chase and Larry and Ryan, and I was like, "Wow, this is good." I was answering questions myself, how I would answer them. So I'm ready. I don't expect myself to win, but I think I know I'm the coolest one. It's gonna be up there. Watch.
You'll drop some knowledge, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And you guys, like I said again, if you're interested, just go to libertyorellis.com, send a message saying that you're interested in learning more about the grand jury stuff. And even if you want to send me your email, actually I already have it on the when you send your stuff anyways. But yeah, I appreciate y'all's time, and this is only the beginning. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, good luck. Thank you.